So Wizards of the Coast releases a statement today addressing the concerns about whether the open gaming license will continue under the new edition of D&D, and a lot of alarm that's been on the internet. And it looks like the OGL will continue on. So are people wrong in raising an alarm? The short answer is no, and it'll take me a while to get there. But first, let's read through this. Hi, I'm Ronald, the rules lawyer. I am a lawyer and also a veteran game master of Pathfinder and Dungeons and Dragons since 2010. And I have been following a lot of the online discussions about the open gaming license, which allows third-party publishers to publish products compatible with 5th edition of D&D, that might be pulled or not used for the next edition of Dungeons and Dragons. And they are working on a 6th edition, though not calling it that. And there is a new statement that has come out from Wizards of the Coast just a couple of hours ago, as we can see here. Will one D&D include an SRD be covered by an OGL? Yes. Well, first, I'm going to say there's what they mean here is they're saying an OGL. And we're going to see soon that they're about to put out a revision to the OGL in number 2. But what they say here is, first, we're designing 1D&D with 5th edition backwards compatibility, so all existing creator content that is compatible with 5th edition will also be compatible with 1D&D. This adds nothing new. People who are publishing for 5e already are familiar with the statements from Wizards that current publications will be compatible with the new edition. However, that is going to be somewhat tenuous, I would say, the crunchier the supplement is. So Grim Hollow is a successful Kickstarter that released recently and has subclasses for a lot of the players' handbook classes, and those will obviously not be very compatible with the new edition since they are making changes to subclasses, which now all start at 3rd level and all have a uniform number of 4 levels at which subclass abilities are attained. Second, we will update the SRD for 1D&D as we complete its development that is informed by the results of playtests that we're conducting with hundreds of thousands of D&D players now. So, to be clear what all of these acronyms mean, the SRD is something technically separate from the OGL. I'm just going to show the current release now. The OGL is just this two pages of terms and conditions, and it starts right here. You can find this on the internet, and it's the next 1.5 pages actually. And it's preceded by the statement that the SRD is released under the open gaming license, is open gaming content as defined under the open gaming license. And what follows is 400 pages of monsters, class abilities, and some basic rules for running 5e. So they're going to release version 1.1 of the OGL early next year, 2023. And what it seems like will happen is that when they release the new edition in 2024, there's going to be an updated SRD that will be released under 1.1 of the OGL. So what is that new OGL? The OGL needs an update to ensure that it keeps doing what it was intended to do, allow the D&D community's independent creators to build and play and grow the game we all love, without allowing things like third parties to mint D&D NFTs and large businesses to exploit our intellectual property. This seems like a catering to what they see people on the internet want to hear, that rage against NFTs and against big businesses, while Hasbro itself is the biggest business of them all within the TTRPG scene. Also, NFTs, to my understanding, have crashed, and it seems like it would have been awfully ballsy for somebody to try to mint an NFT that had the Dungeons and Dragons logo in it. I don't know NFTs too much, but that seems like an obvious violation of their copyright, so I don't even know if that was really a serious threat. So what's changing? First, we're making sure that OGL 1.1 is clear about what it covers and what it doesn't. OGL 1.1 makes clear it only covers material created for use in or as TTRPGs, and those materials are only ever permitted as printed media or static electronic files like EPUBs and PDFs. Other types of content, like videos and video games, are only possible through the fan content policy. I skimmed it. It just seemed like you can release things as long as you are not selling it. Or a custom agreement with us. To clarify, outside of printed media and static electronic files, the OGL does not cover it. So we're about to see what it doesn't cover, what is most important of what that doesn't cover. But I'm going to point out that it says videos here, and content creators who make videos like me might be a little concerned about this phrase. Can I read out rules of the new edition on my video? And I'll just say this, that probably falls under fair use. You can comment on things and reproduce things for the purpose of comment as long as it doesn't go past a certain line. I'm not an IP attorney. That's not my specialty of law. That's what I have from my layman's understanding. So that's my way of saying this is not legal advice. Will this affect the D&D content and services players use today? It shouldn't. Okay, that is a interesting use of words. Instead of saying no, they say it should not. So we'll see what that means more. The top VTT platforms already have custom agreements with Wizards to do what they do. Okay, the top VTT right now is Roll20, and they have an agreement with Wizards to sell packages that have the rules, various rule books and adventures. That's what they have with Wizards now. D&D merchandise, like minis and novels, were never intended to be part of the OGL, and OGL 1.1 won't change that. Okay, I'll finish the paragraph. Creators wishing to leverage D&D for those forms of expression will need, as they always have needed, custom agreements between us. I think that this is a little white noise. I don't think anyone thought that they could release official Drizzt or D&D minis or release official or release novels set in the Forgotten Realms or using other intellectual property of Wizards to cover for what's going on with VTTs. Because here, Roll20 does not operate under the OGL. They, all of these VTTs, Fantasy Grounds, they have been doing so through not the OGL, but through a separate agreement, a license with Wizards of the Coast. So this is really a nothing statement. By saying creators wishing to leverage will have to, as always, do custom agreements between us. I don't know what the expiration dates for the current licenses that they have, but they're definitely going to lose much profitability once the new edition releases. Roll20's version of the Player's Handbook for 5e is not going to be useful to people using playing the new edition. And I don't know, I have not read those agreements. I don't know if it covers future 6e publications, but I doubt it. And either way, it's going to have some expiration date. So there needs to be some renegotiation with those companies. And who knows? Wizards may do something very predatory or aggressive. We know very well, and we can assume safely from their world announcement trailer, that they plan to create a very visually attractive virtual tabletop that will outcompete against other VTTs. And they would like very much for people to have to use Wizards VTT in order to play the new edition with ease, without having to hack something or do something with lower production values. So this statement is completely compatible with a scenario where in 2024, Roll20 and Wizards are not able to come to an agreement for some reason. And it could be Wizards not really wanting to, it could be Wizards making really high demands because they don't really want to empower a competitor to compete against their own VTT. And they can look back at this and say, well, we held open the possibility that VTTs will be compatible with the new edition, but they failed you, the customer, by not agreeing with us. It shouldn't end the ability to play our new edition with VTTs. Okay, so moving on. Second, we're updating the OGL to offer different terms to creators who choose to make free share-alike content and creators who want to sell their products. What does this mean for you as a creator? If you're making share-alike content, which I assume means not for profit or any money, very little is going to change from what you're already used to. Okay, that's not big news. If you're making commercial content, relatively little is going to change for most creators. For most of you who are selling custom content, here are the new things you'll need to do. 1, accept the license terms and let us know what you're offering for sales. So you're going to need to, like with the GSL for 4E, sign something online that is submitted to Wizards so they know who you are, probably give your contact information. And you also need to let them know what you're going to be selling. So they're going to have some person on salary, looking at everybody to see who's making money, which is number 2. Report all OGL related revenue annually. If you make more than $50,000 in a year, and that's going to be a lot of people, anyone who's doing this full time. Number 3, include a creator product badge on your work. I don't know enough about IP law to know what this. No one publishing under the OGL today is gonna. There's gonna be no confusion that it is an official WOTC product because they can't have the trade dress or use the word D&D. So I'm not exactly sure what practical effect this means this would have for creators. When we roll out OGL 1.1, we will also provide explanatory videos, FAQs, and a web portal for registration to make navigating these requirements as easy and intuitive as possible. We'll also have help available to creators to navigate the new process. And then it goes on to say that there are only 20 creators worldwide, less than 20, who make more than $750,000 in income in a year. And for them, there will be a royalty starting in 2024. And what's interesting to me is that it's not defined within the OGL in early 2023. They're not going to set a certain percentage. So that might be a separate thing that they put out that is uniform for all creators, or something that has to be negotiated individually with those creators. So it's not clear how much that royalty is. We know from DM's Guild that they want 50% of the profits of small creators. And so there may very well be a back and forth between those less than 20 creators and Wizards between now and 2024 as to, what does that mean exactly? So even for the creators making significant money selling D&D supplements and games, no royalties will be due 2023. Okay. Bottom line, the OGL is not going away. It is going to be revised. They don't say that in this paragraph, but this is trying to put out a fire. You will still be able to create new D&D content, publish it anywhere, and game with your friends and followers in all the ways that make this game and community so great. The thousands of creators publishing across Kickstarter, DM's Guild, and more are a critical part of the D&D experience. Yada, yada, yada. Okay, so what can we take away from this? I think that on the question of was Wizards going to not use the OGL with the new edition, I think absolutely yes, they were considering it. And they are deciding not to do what they were considering. I think it was pretty clear, and people were right in raising alarms about their non-response to a leak that they were possibly not going with the OGL, where they said that the OGL will evolve. That was not assuring. And also, there was this, I should replay this email that went out to content creators for D&D. Nerd Immersion had a video where he reads it out, and I'll go ahead and play it.
Emails have started making their way out to content creators for Dungeons & Dragons from Wizards of the Coast, offering information, but locking it behind an NDA. So there's an email that you may have seen. It's floating around. Other people have mentioned it, but it reads as follows. Hello. I work in the business development group at Wizards, and I'd like to set some time to talk about D&D and opportunities associated with some updates we are doing across our business. We are reaching out to some of our key creators to discuss our approach and what it means for the D&D community. There's been some conjecture in the media, and we want to ensure you are clear on our updates and what it means for you. Would you or someone from your company be able to meet tomorrow or next week for a conversation? Since this is confidential, I like to ensure we have an NDA in place prior to the discussion. I can send that through. If you let me know the signatory, it would come via DocuSign. Might be even more timely if you have the schedule for it to be added. So,
okay. So he goes on about how, okay, if this is really going to be to clear the air, why is this include an NDA? And yes, it's standard for companies who to have NDAs with people who are involved in something that is in evolution, such as a playtest. But when the purpose of this meeting is supposedly to clear the air about the OGL, Nerd Immersion was completely right to raise a flag here. He put out a hashtag OpenD&D, and other creators and a lot of people overall have been trending that on Twitter and putting out statements opposing this. So some of the background, we know full well that they said this in a fireside chat to investors, that Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro want to monetize D&D more. And I think the real message to the investors in that meeting was more on the 4-quadrant strategy of there being more growth with the movie coming out and the AAA video game next year, and that D&D Beyond is somewhat and monetizing players is kind of a relatively small part of the bigger picture, but that does not preclude them wanting to get more money out of the actual TTRPG players. And it did seem like an idiotic move, I think, to actually ice out third-party publishers, because a lot of people who DM can attest to not being satisfied with what WOTC puts out with their adventures, their supplements, their options, and particularly in the last year or two. And content creators, third-party publishers possibly getting some kind of personal cut, some livable income supporting the D&D game has been overall good. But we know from the history of 4th edition D&D that they have in the past tried to create a wall around making content for D&D. So it wasn't out of the question. And I think that Wizards being sketchy and offering to meet people under an NDA suggests that they were going to do something they needed an NDA to protect, to prevent the news getting out over. One might even say this was perhaps a conscious trial balloon to see what the community's response, specifically the response of third-party creators and content creators, was going to be to a possible change. So this is my long-winded way of saying that they care to an extent what third-party creators and what players think and DMs think, to the extent that they don't want any fires and bridges to burn, let's say. And I thank Nerd Immersion and others who spoke out and told others to speak out. I think that this is what, in my experience in life, my main profession is politics and also in law. So this is what a victory sometimes looks like. They don't admit, particularly against somebody who has kind of some more power than you, an institution, in this case a corporation. They never admit that it was an outcry that caused them to do something. They will do a little gaslighting even and give the thing that you want and indicate that they were going to do this all along. And I see some comments online saying, well, people were just overreacting and, trying to get clicks. A lot of that sure, I make thumbnails that are kind of clickbaity myself, but the reactions were earnest and genuine. And there's a way in which people grousing about the internet being dramatic and clickbaity is itself a kind of grousing. So anyway, I think that the people who make a difference are the ones I look to, turn my face to, and who speak out and on behalf of players' real concerns and creators' real concerns. I think that this is a time to congratulate ourselves. Now, on to the other news, which is that I think this indicates this is not incompatible with them wanting to aggressively dominate the VTT space with their new fancy Unreal 5 engine software. Two things are not clear at all at the moment. Like, if you are on Roll20 or Fantasy Grounds or Foundry, which I use, and I don't know enough about IP law to say for certain here, maybe someone in the comments can, but I don't know if they're going to tolerate people using even a community database in Roll20 to play the new edition on that platform or in Fantasy Grounds. They might say that is proprietary, no one can emulate it. And if you're going to do that, that has to be within a VTT that is officially licensing with us and willing to accept our terms and conditions, or in our official 1D&D VTT. Another thing is third-party creators may be iced out of this new official VTT and D&D Beyond, not get and might have to come to a separate agreement outside the OGL with Wizards to have their content playable within that environment. It might be that third-party publishers might have to thrive purely outside of that through in-person play. So those are my overall takeaways. Wizards still wants our money, but they didn't win this battle. And yes, that creators and publishers and fans of the hobby should continue to, yes, raise hell, which is the only way to be heard when you're dealing with a big corporation. And also the big news is what they're not addressing here, which is the recent news that they are going to monetize D&D Beyond more and players more through some means that we can speculate about, we don't fully know, but they are going to do something there. And there's been a new thriving of people out there on YouTube I've been seeing, especially in the OSR movement, who are saying it's now time to not play D&D anymore, official D&D, current D&D. And I wholly subscribe to that sentiment. I think that there's going to be an exploring by the new influx of players who've entered the hobby the last several years via D&D and don't know or are not familiar with other options outside 5e, of looking at other systems. And I think this is a really exciting time for the hobby. So that's it. Those are my thoughts. I am the Rules Lawyer. I'd love to hear what you think in the comments. And if you want to follow my continuing Lawyers Critique series of 1D&D, I'll link to the playlist at the end of this video, and also subscribe and ring the bell to be notified of my future releases. And I have a Discord community where we talk about 1D&D and Pathfinder 2e. And I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time.